Open the inner doors and let my men through. We are here to secure the succession." The man who said it wore the dark sash of the Privy Council and the easy smile of someone who had never once in his life been told no. He stood at the foot of the coronation stair with 11 other men ranged behind him, and every one of those 11 carried a long case slung across his back, the kind that holds a ceremonial saber, or a banner pole, or, if a man lies well enough, a rifle broken down into 3 pieces. I was the sentry on the threshold of the hall of the crowning. I had been on that stone since the 3rd hour of the morning, and I would be on it until the crown was set or until I was carried off it. Those were the only 2 ways the post ended that day. Behind me, through the open arch, the whole realm of Esterhold had gathered to see a young woman become its queen, and the choir had already begun the long opening that would carry her up the aisle. In front of me stood Lord Varn Aldous of the Privy Council, who held out a folded paper with a red seal on it and told me, in a voice pitched for the men behind him and not for me, to stand aside. "This is a directive of the Council," he said, "sealed within the hour. In a moment of succession the Council secures the threshold. Read it if you doubt me. Then open the doors." I did not read it. I did not take it. My orders for that threshold had been given to me 3 days before by the Lord Steward of the household, in writing, in a room with 4 witnesses, and they did not bend for a paper waved at me on a stair by a man in a hurry. No one passed the inner doors of the hall of the crowning under arms. No one. Not the council, not the army, not the steward who gave me the order. The only blades that crossed that threshold were the 2 ceremonial swords of state, carried by 2 named officers, unsheathed and held aloft so all could see them, logged the night before, inspected at dawn. 11 long cases on 11 backs were not on any list I had been given. So I held. I kept my eyes forward, over the top of Lord Varn's head, at the cold morning light coming down through the high windows, and I did not move. He had expected me to move. I watched it cost him. A man like that has spent his whole life inside the small certainty that when he holds out his hand, the thing he wants is placed in it. He held out the paper and nothing happened, and for one beat, his smile slipped, and I saw the thing underneath it, and the thing underneath it was not impatience. It was fear. He was afraid of being late. That told me more than the paper would have. "Soldier," he said, and now the easy voice had a wire in it. "Do you understand what is happening above us? In a quarter of an hour they will set the crown on a girl who cannot hold this realm together for a season. The great houses are not agreed. The treasury is bleeding. There are men in this very hall who mean to use a weak crown as a doorway. The council means to be standing in that doorway when they try it, armed, ready, lawful. That is what these men are for. You are not refusing me. You are refusing the safety of the crown itself. Now stand aside, and let us do our duty, before someone with worse intentions does theirs." It was a good speech. I want you to understand that. It was not a cartoon villain's speech. Half of it was even true. The houses were not agreed, the treasury was thin, and there were men in that hall who would have been glad to see the morning go wrong. A lesser day, in a lesser room, that speech would have opened a great many doors. It very nearly opened mine. Not because I believed him, but because the picture he painted was so reasonable, and the choir above was so close to the place in the music where the queen would kneel, and I was one man on a stair with 11 armed strangers in front of me and a held order behind me, and every instinct a person has says that when a great lord tells you the realm is in danger, you help him. But I had been taught the one thing that holds when everything else gives way. You do not weigh the order against the man's reasons. You hold the order, and you let the people whose job it is to weigh reasons do the weighing. My job was the threshold. My job was the line on the stone. If Lord Varn was right, and the crown needed armed protection on the inside, then there was a lawful way to put it there. A way that ran through the steward and the Earl Marshal and the new sovereign's own consent, written and witnessed. and not through a sealed paper produced on a stair 11 minutes before the crowning by a man who was sweating in a cold room. "My lord," I said. It was the first thing I had said. My voice came out level, which surprised me because my heart was going like a drum. "No one passes the inner doors under arms. If the council has new orders for this post, they will come to me through the Lord Steward in writing, as my standing orders did. Until they do, the doors stay shut to all weapons. I will send for the steward now." "There is no time to send for the steward." "Then there is no time for what you are asking," I said, "because the only thing that opens this door is his word, and his word takes the time it takes." I had never in my life spoken so many sentences to a man of his rank. The space between us went very still. Behind him, I saw 2 of the 11 shift their weight, and I saw one of them, a lean man with a soldier's hands, not a councilman's, let his fingers drift toward the strap of the case on his back and settle there. Not drawing, just resting. The way a man rests his hand on a thing he intends to use, to remind himself where it is. That was the moment I stopped being afraid of being wrong. Because an honest escort does not touch the strap of its case when a sentry asks it to wait for the steward. An honest escort says, "Of course, send for him. We will stand here in the cold and be glad you are careful." Only one kind of man reaches for the strap, and it is the kind of man who has already decided that the door is going to open whether the sentry lives or not. Lord Varn saw me see it. Something passed over his face, not the fear now, but the cold underneath the fear, the calculation a man makes when his good speech has failed, and he is deciding what to spend next. "You're making a terrible mistake," he said softly, so the men above could not hear it, only me. "When this is over, you will be the soldier who refused the council and let the realm fall. They will write your name on it. Open the door." "Then they will write it," I said, "but they will write it on the right side of the line." And I turned my head, only my head, 8 degrees, the smallest movement the post allows, toward the gallery rail above the stair, where I knew, because I had marked him at dawn, a single page of the household stood waiting for exactly the signal a sentry is never supposed to need to give. The boy was 11 years old. His name was Tice, and his whole duty that day was to stand at the gallery rail in his blue livery and carry messages no one expected to need carried. I had spoken to him once at dawn when the hall was still empty and the cold came up off the stone like water. I had told him, "If I turn my head and look at you, you do not ask me why. You go to the steward's man at the sacristy door and you say, 'The threshold is challenged.' You say nothing else. You do not run because running starts a panic, and a panic is what a clever man wants. You walk fast like a boy who has forgotten something. Can you do that?" And he had looked at me the way boys look at soldiers, which is to say as though I were made of the same stone as the building, and he had said yes. He did it perfectly. I saw him take it in, my head turning, my eyes finding him, and I saw him understand, and I saw him not run. He turned and went along the gallery at the brisk, unremarkable walk of a page who has been sent for a forgotten thing, and he was out of sight before Lord Varn had finished deciding whether the turn of my head had meant anything at all. It is a small thing, a turned head and a walking boy. It does not look like the saving of a crown, but everything that came after came because of it, and I want the people who tell this story later to know that it did not start with a charge of cavalry or a wall of guards. It started with a sentry who would not move and a child who would not run. "What was that?" Lord Varn said. He had caught the turn. Of course he had. A man planning a thing of that size watches everything. "Who did you signal?" "A page, my lord, to send for the steward." "As I told you I would." His jaw worked. He had a decision to make now, and I could see him making it. He could wait, let the steward come, let the matter be argued in the open, and trust that his sealed paper and his rank and his good reasons would carry the day before enough of the household woke up to ask the questions I was asking, or he could stop waiting. The men behind him were a threat only as long as no one named them a threat. The instant the steward stood on that stair and asked why 12 men of the council were carrying long cases to a crowning, the whole shape of the morning changed, and not in Lord Varn's favor. His advantage was speed and quiet. The boy walking fast along the gallery had just begun to take both away from him. He chose to stop waiting. I saw it the way you see a wave decide to break. "Enough," he said, no longer soft. "I have given you a lawful order under the seal of the council in the hour of succession. You have refused it. That is treason, soldier, and I have witnesses." He half turned to the 11. "The threshold is held against the council. Clear it." The lean man with the soldier's hands took one step forward and reached for the strap of his case in earnest now. And the morning, which had been a thing of music and candlelight a quarter hour before, turned into the other thing entirely. I did not draw. I want that on the record too. The post I held does not carry a loaded weapon at a crowning. That is the whole point of it, that the man on the threshold is not the danger, only the door. What I carried was a ceremonial blade, sheathed and peace-bonded, and a body that had been trained for years to stand exactly where it was standing and not be moved. So I did the only thing the post allowed and the only thing that mattered. I planted my feet on the line of the threshold, I squared my shoulders to fill the arch, and I made of myself the one thing a door must be, which is shut. "You will have to carry me off it," I said. "And the moment you do, every man and woman in that hall will know what you are, because the only way past me is over me, and there is no quiet way to do that in front of 2,000 witnesses." He understood me. The lean man understood me too and stopped, because the lean man was not a fool. He had reached for the case to frighten me, and now he was reckoning the cost of using it, which was a body on the threshold of a crowning and 2,000 people turning to look. That is the thing the clever ones forget about a sentry. He is not strong because of what he can do to you. He is strong because of what you cannot do to him without everyone seeing. And then from the top of the coronation stair, a voice I knew said, "Lord Varn, you are blocking the Queen's threshold. Step down from it." The Lord Steward of the household came down the stair the way he did everything, without hurry, in his gray robe of office, with his white wand of office in his hand and no weapon of any kind on him, because the most dangerous man in the building was supposed to be the one who needed none. The boy Tice came 2 steps behind him, having delivered the threshold as challenged exactly, and then turned around and brought the steward back at a pace that, on a man of 70, looked like an old man strolling, and was in fact as fast as that old man had moved in 20 years. Lord Varn turned to meet him, and the easy smile came back up over his face like a curtain dropping into place. "Steward, thank heaven. This soldier of yours has lost his head. He's refusing a sealed council directive at the threshold, in the hour of succession. Tell him to stand aside before he turns a ceremony into an incident." "May I see the directive?" the steward said. "Of course." Lord Varn held out the folded paper with its red seal, and the steward took it and turned it over once in his old hands, and looked at the seal for what felt to me like a very long time. "This is the council's privy seal," the steward said. "It is." "Affixed within the hour, you said." "Within the hour. The council met in emergency session at first light." "The council," the steward said, in the mild voice of a man asking after the weather, "did not meet at first light. I sat with the council last night until the second bell, and we agreed there would be no session this morning, that all hands might attend the crowning. So I am curious, my lord, which council met at first light to affix this seal, and which members were present and how they came to be carrying." He lifted his eyes from the paper at last, and ran them down the line of 11 men and their 11 long cases, slow, one by one, weapons to the threshold of a hall where, by the order I myself signed 3 days ago and gave to this soldier, no weapon may pass. The stair went very quiet. Here is a thing I have learned about powerful men who decide to take a thing that is not theirs. Their whole plan rests on no one stopping to count, on the music carrying everyone forward, on the speed of the morning, the weight of the rank, the reasonableness of the speech, all of it pushing the watcher to wave the thing through and ask the questions later, when later is too late. The sentry's whole art is to be the one fixed thing that does not get carried forward. I had not stopped Lord Varn. I had only refused to be carried, and by refusing I had bought the 4 minutes it took for a boy to walk a gallery and an old man to come down a stair and begin, mildly, to count. And the counting was deadly. I watched it land on Lord Varn. He had a paper with a real seal. I do not doubt the seal was real. A man who plans a thing like that gets hold of the seal. But a real seal on a lie that no one stops to examine is a key. A real seal on a lie that an old man in a gray robe begins to examine, out loud, in front of 2 delegations of nobles drifting toward the stair to see why the music had not yet reached the kneeling. That is a confession waiting to be written. "Steward," Lord Varn said, and the wire was back in his voice, "I will not stand here and be interrogated by a chamberlain while the realm is unguarded. My men come in. That is the end of it." He gestured sharp to the 11. "Move." They moved. Or the lean man did. He came forward off the line of cases, and 3 others came with him. And for one terrible second, the whole thing balanced on the edge of becoming the bloody morning Lord Varn had planned. 11 armed men against 1 sentry and 1 unarmed old man on an open stair. And that is when the household answered. I did not see all of it at once. I could not, because I never took my eyes off the men in front of me, and a sentry who turns to watch his own rescue has stopped being a threshold and started being a spectator. But I heard it, and I felt it, the way you feel a tide come in around your feet before you look down and see the water. From the gallery above and behind me, where Tice had walked, came the sudden, unmistakable sound of doors, heavy doors, all along the upper level, opening at once. From the sacristy passage to my left came boots, many of them, moving at the controlled double of men who have drilled the thing 100 times and are not running because running is what the enemy wants. And from the great arch at the top of the stair, where the Queen's procession waited, came the bright ring of ceremonial swords being drawn. The 2 named officers of state, the only 2 blades lawfully in that hall, stepping down out of the procession to put themselves between 11 strangers and a girl in a white gown. The household had heard the threshold is challenged. And the household, which is 10,000 small habits drilled into 1,000 men until the right thing happens by itself, was rallying to the line 1 sentry had refused to give up. The lean man stopped. They all stopped. 11 men who had counted on a quiet stair and a single sentry, and the rush of a morning that would carry everything before it found themselves, instead, on an open stone in the slow gray light, with armed officers of state coming down toward them, with a gallery full of open doors and watching faces above, with a corridor of boots filling on their flank, and with 2,000 of the realms great and good in the hall behind them, all beginning, 1 head at a time, to turn and look. The thing Lord Varn had needed above everything was for no one to look. And now everyone was looking. I have thought a great deal since about what saved the morning, and the honest answer is that nothing about it was dramatic. There was no charge. No blow was struck on that stair. The men of the household did not rush the 11 and wrestle them down. That would have been the bloody incident Lord Varn wanted, the thing he could have pointed to forever afterward. See, the council came to secure the succession, and the household cut them down on the steps. Instead, the captain of the inner guard, a square man named Hale whom I had served under for 6 years, came down the sacristy passage at the controlled double, halted his men in a clean line across the foot of the stair, and did not draw a single blade. He simply put 30 disciplined men where there had been empty air, and let the arithmetic do the rest. "My Lord Steward," Captain Hale said, as evenly as if he were reporting the change of the watch, "the inner guard stands ready. What are your orders for these gentlemen and their cases?" It was a beautiful thing to hear, and I will tell you why. He did not say arrest them. He did not say cut them down. He asked the steward in front of everyone for lawful orders, which meant that whatever happened next would happen by the book, in the open, witnessed, with the chain of command running clean from the new sovereign's steward down through the captain to the men in the line. Lord Varn had brought a sealed paper and a lie. The household answered with the thing a sealed paper and a lie cannot survive. Daylight, and a question asked out loud, and the patience to wait for the right man to answer it. The steward turned the folded directive over once more in his hand. Then he did something I will remember to the end of my life. He held it up so that the nearest of the watching nobles could see the seal, and he said, in his mild old voice that somehow carried to the back of the stair, "This paper bears the privy seal of the council. It directs that armed men be admitted to the threshold of the crowning to secure the succession. I tell you plainly, my lords and ladies, that no council met this morning to write it, that the order it gives is contrary to the standing order I signed and gave to this soldier 3 days since, and that there is only one reason to bring armed men through a door where weapons are forbidden, and it is not to secure a succession. It is to seize one." He let that sit. The word seize went around the watching crowd like cold water. "This soldier," the steward went on, and now he looked at me only for a moment, but I felt it like a hand on the shoulder, did the one thing the morning required. He did not argue the realm's danger with a lord on a stair. He held the door and sent for the man whose place it is to weigh such things, and gave us the 4 minutes we needed to count. Had he opened it, you would all be looking the other way right now, and these 11 cases would be open behind you. He did not open it, so we have the time and the light and the count and the law, Captain Hale. My lord, disarm these men, carefully in full view, and let every case be opened where the lords can see what is in it. If I am wrong about the cases, I will apologize to Lord Varn before the whole hall, and gladly. If I am right, the mild voice did not change at all, then we will all know together what we were saved from and by whom. There was nothing Lord Varn could do. That was the genius of the way the household answered him. If he resisted now, before 2,000 witnesses and 30 disciplined men, he proved the steward's every word with his own hands. If he submitted, the cases were opened, and the cases would damn him. He had built his whole morning on quiet and speed, and the sentry on the threshold had taken away the speed, and the steward had taken away the quiet, and now there was nothing left to build on. I watched the last of the easy smile go off his face for good, and what was under it at the very end was not even fear anymore. It was the flat, empty look of a man who has just understood that he has lost, and that there will be no second morning. "Open the cases," the steward said again gently. The lean man with the soldier's hands looked at Lord Varn for an order, and Lord Varn gave him none, because there was no order left to give that did not end in blood on the steps of a crowning with the whole realm watching, and even Lord Varn at the end would not pay that price for a thing already lost. So the lean man set his case down on the stone slowly and unclasped it, and opened it where everyone could see. Inside, broken into 3 oiled pieces and nested in fitted velvet, was a rifle. I heard the sound the crowd made. It was not a scream. It was worse than a scream. It was a long, low sound, the sound of 2,000 people understanding at the same moment how close they had come, and that the closeness had been measured in 4 minutes and the breadth of one man's shoulders in a doorway. The second case came open, and the third, and they were the same, and after the fourth the steward raised his hand and said there was no need to open the rest, that the lords had seen enough, and that the captain would secure the men and their cases for the law to examine. Captain Hale's line moved then, and it moved the way the household always moves when it finally moves, which is to say all at once and without a wasted motion. I want to tell you exactly how it looked, because it is the part of the morning the realm never saw and the part I would most want it to see. There was no rush. 2 guardsmen stepped to each of the 11, one at each elbow, close and quiet. The way you take a man who might still do something foolish without giving him the room to do it. Above us, all along the gallery, the open doors had filled with more of the household, equerries, pages. The off-duty men of the night watch who had heard the threshold is challenged go through the building like a struck bell and had come without being told, because that is what the words are for. They did not shout. They did not throng the rail. They simply stood, rank on rank of them in the high shadow, so that an armed man looking up to see whether the way behind him was clear would find that it was not, that it had filled silently while he was busy, that the whole house had woken around him and was watching him with the patience of a thing that knows it has already won. That is the rally I will swear to the rest of my life, not a wall of drawn steel, a house that woke and counted and stood and let the standing be the answer. The 11 were taken, each man by 2, their cases sealed and carried away, and not one blow was struck, because there was no longer anyone willing to strike one. The lean man went quietly. At the last he looked at me, the only one of them who did, and I could not read what was in the look, whether it was hatred or a soldier's grudging account of a soldier, and I did not try. I kept my eyes forward. I was still on the threshold. The post was not over. Lord Varn they did not seize. That too was done correctly. A lord of the Privy Council is not dragged off a stair by guardsmen, whatever he has done. The law has a longer and a colder way with such men, and the steward knew it. So Lord Varn was invited, with great courtesy and 2 armed officers a pace behind him, to withdraw to a chamber off the sacristy and wait there upon the pleasure of the crown. He went. At the foot of the stair he paused beside me close and said, just for me, in a voice scraped down to nothing, "You should have opened the door." "No, my lord," I said, eyes forward to the cold light in the high windows. "You should never have come to it." He had no answer to that. There is none. He went, and I never saw him again, though I heard much later the long cold thing the law did with him, and it was just, and I will not trouble you with it, because it is not the part of the morning that matters. The part that matters had already happened, and it had happened on a stair, in 4 minutes, between a sentry who would not move and a child who would not run and an old man who stopped to count. The steward came to me last, before he went back up the stair to set the morning right. He stood in front of me for a moment, and I kept my eyes forward as the post required, and he said, "Lo, what is your name, soldier?" I told him. "You held the door," he said. "Do you understand what you held?" "The threshold, my lord." "More than the threshold." He looked up the stair, to where the procession had reformed itself, to where the choir had begun, very softly, to take up the music again from the place it had been stopped, as if the realm were a body whose held breath was beginning, slowly, to ease back out. "You held the difference between a coronation and a coup. You held it with your feet on a line and your eyes front and a question on your lips when a great lord told you the sky was falling. That is the whole of it, you know. That is what we are for, not to be strong, to be the one fixed thing that will not be carried forward, so that the men whose place it is to weigh and to count are given the time to weigh and to count. You gave us the time." He almost smiled. "You did it by doing nothing at all, in exactly the right place for exactly long enough. There is no harder thing in soldiering. Stand your post." "My lord," I said, and he went up the stair. "I will tell you about the crowning, because you have earned the end of it." They did not stop it. That was the answer the realm gave to Lord Varn and his 11 cases. Not a long inquiry, not a postponement, not a frightened crowd hurried out into the cold. The steward went back up the stair and bowed to the young queen waiting at the top of it, and said a few quiet words to her that I could not hear, and she listened with her chin level and her hands still, and then she nodded once and came on. She came down the long aisle through the place where, 4 minutes before, 11 men had meant to open their cases, and she did not hurry, and she did not look at the place where it had nearly happened, and when she passed my threshold she was looking straight ahead, the way I was, 2 people keeping their eyes front for the same reason. Because the morning was bigger than either of us, and the way you honor a thing bigger than yourself is to do your own small part of it perfectly and let the rest take care of itself. I have stood at attention through a great many ceremonies and watched a great many people of every rank pass my post, and I have learned to read a person by the way they cross a threshold. The frightened ones quicken, the proud ones slow to be looked at. The young queen did neither. She crossed the line of my threshold at the same even pace she had kept the whole length of the aisle, her eyes level, her hands still at her sides, and as she passed within a foot of me I understood, the way you understand a thing in your body before your mind has the words for it, that the steward had told her everything. The paper, the cases, the 4 minutes, the rifle in the velvet, and that she had chosen, knowing all of it, to walk through the place where it had nearly happened without flinching and without hurrying. Because she had decided that the answer a realm gives to men who call its queen too weak is a queen who does not break her stride. It was the bravest thing I saw that morning, and I include my own standing in that count. She knelt. The crown was brought, and in the great hall of the crowning, with the gray light turning to gold as the sun finally cleared the eastern windows, the realm of Esterhold set its crown on the head of a girl whom a clever lord had called too weak to hold it, and who had walked, that very morning, straight through the place where men had waited to prove her weak, without once breaking her stride. I stood my post until the crown was set. Then, when the choir broke into the high music that means it is done, that the thing the realm came to do is done and cannot be undone, I let myself do the one thing I had not let myself do all morning, which was to breathe all the way out. That is nearly the end. There is one more thing and then I am finished. A long while after, months, there was a small ceremony, the kind the household does without trumpets, in a plain room with the right people in it and no one else. The steward was there and the captain, and a few others and the boy Tice, scrubbed and terrified in a new coat. And the queen was there. They had asked me to attend and I had come, and I stood at attention the way I always stand because I do not know another way. The queen came down the short room and stopped in front of me, and I kept my eyes forward over the top of her head, the way the post requires, even there, even then, and she said quietly, so that it was almost only between us, "They tell me you were the door." "I held the threshold, ma'am," I said. "They tell me a great lord ordered you to open it, with a sealed paper and a true and frightening reason, and that you would not." "He had no order from the steward, ma'am. No weapon passes that door without it. Those were my standing orders." "And if he had been right," she said, "if the realm had truly been in danger and you, by holding the door, had let the danger in, what then?" It was the question Lord Varn had asked me on the stair, only she asked it the other way round and gently and meaning it. I thought about how to answer it honestly. "Then I would have been wrong, ma'am," I said. "But I would have been wrong on the right side of the line. The door is not mine to weigh. It is only mine to hold or open, and the holding is the safe mistake and the opening is the one you cannot take back. So when I am not sure, I hold, and I send for the man whose place it is to be sure. If I had opened it on his word and been wrong, you would be no queen this morning. If I had held it and been wrong, you would have lost 4 minutes and an apology. I will make that trade every day I draw breath." She looked at me for a moment. Then she did a thing no queen is required to do, and that I had never had done to me in all my years on the stone, and that I have not forgotten for one day since. She inclined her head to me, not a nod, but a true small bow, the bow you give to a thing you honor, and she said, "Then I owe my crown to a man who knew the difference between the safe mistake and the one you cannot take back. The realm will not hear your name, soldier. That is the price of your work. The doors you hold are not the ones anyone remembers because nothing came through them. But I will know it. And when I am tempted, as queens are, to be carried forward by a clever man with a frightening reason and a sealed paper, I will think of the door on my crowning morning that would not open, and the man who would not move, and I will stop, and I will count." She straightened, and the small ceremony went on to its small end, and I went back to my post, because the post is always there and is always now and is never in the end, about the morning anyone remembers. I have stood a great many thresholds since. None of them were ever again the threshold of a crowning with 11 armed men at the foot of the stair, and I am glad of it. A man wants one of those in a life, and not two. But I have stood many an ordinary door on many an ordinary morning, with no music and no queen and no clever lord, just the cold and the long hours and the certainty that nothing whatever is going to happen, and I have held every one of them exactly the way I held that one. Because that is the whole secret of it, and they tried to teach it to me for years before I understood it on a stair. You do not hold the great door any harder than the small one. You hold them all the same. You stand on the line, you keep your eyes front. And when a man you cannot refuse holds out a paper and tells you the sky is falling and you must open the door right now, this instant, before it is too late, you remember that the whole reason there is a door, and a line, and a man standing on it who will not be carried forward is for exactly that moment. You do not open it. You send for the one whose place it is to be sure. And you hold, and you let the holding be enough, because some mornings the holding is the whole realm, and the man on the threshold is the only one who knows it, and the only one who will never be asked to. I held the door. That is all. That is everything. I held the door and the crown was set and no one came through who was not meant to. Ask me what I did that morning and that is the whole of the answer, and I would not change one word of it, nor 1 second of the standing still. That is what we are for.